What if the ocean doesn't just take people? What if it keeps them? And what if, sometimes, it sends something back? Tonight's story isn't about a haunted house. It's about a house that was never empty. A house that didn't sit near the sea. It belonged to it. And once it noticed you, you were already too late. Welcome back to Fear Spiral, where we explore the places that shouldn't exist, but do. There are beach houses you rent for sunsets, for peace, for silence. And then there are beach houses that wait. The listing looked ordinary enough. Ocean view, private shoreline, unbeatable price. Too unbeatable. The kind of cheap that doesn't feel lucky. It feels wrong. 3 separate groups stayed there. 3 separate times, different years, different people. But every story ended the same way. With water, with whispers, and with something beneath the floor. Listening. At first, it was small things. Walls that felt damp even when the sky was clear. Salt forming along the baseboards like frost. Dripping sounds in rooms with no pipes. You'd tell yourself it's the ocean air. You'd laugh it off until the dripping starts following you. Until footprints appear where no one walked. Until the sand outside your window starts shifting. Not from wind, from movement. They all described the same feeling. Like the house was breathing. Like it was holding something inside its walls. Like it didn't want to be alone anymore. And here's the strangest part. No records of the property exist. No ownership history, no permits, no satellite trace. When authorities searched for it, it wasn't there. Not burned down, not collapsed, gone. As if the shoreline swallowed it whole. But survivors remember. They remember the smell of salt in dry rooms. They remember scratching beneath the floors at 3 a.m. They remember doors swelling shut. They remember voices underwater, calling their names. And every single one of them said the same thing. The house doesn't appear on the beach. It appears for you. So tonight, lock your doors. Turn up the volume. And if you hear dripping in your walls, don't go looking for the source. Because once you open that hidden door, it opens you back. This is the house that dripped saltwater. And you're about to step inside. Cara's story. The house didn't look abandoned. It looked claimed. Gray wood twisted by years of wind leaned toward the sea as if listening to it. The structure stood crooked at the edge of a forgotten shoreline, where jagged cliffs met violent water in a constant booming rhythm. No nearby town, no lights on the horizon. Just rock, tide, and isolation. It felt less like a vacation rental, and more like something that had grown there. Cara knew it the moment she stepped out of the car. "This is it?" she asked quietly. Mark grinned, already hauling out a cooler. Oceanfront. 2 stories. Dirt cheap. You're welcome. Too cheap, she thought. The front steps groaned under their weight. The door stuck before finally giving way with a swollen crack. Inside, the air was thick, briny and heavy, like the sea had been exhaling into the walls for decades. Jenna laughed, brushing cobwebs from an old chandelier. Bit of a fixer-upper. Tom raised a beer to haunted houses and hangovers. They all laughed, except Cara. She pressed her hand against the nearest wall. Cold, damp, not humid, wet. She pulled her hand back and rubbed her fingers together. A fine crust shimmered against her skin. Salt. That's weird, she murmured. What is? Jenna called from the kitchen. The walls are sweating. Tom smirked. Maybe it misses the ocean. Too close. That night felt almost normal. They built a fire in the stone pit outside, drank wine, told old college stories. The stars stretched wide and sharp above them, while the waves crashed endlessly below the cliffs. Yet even in the laughter, Cara kept glancing back at the house. It didn't reflect firelight properly. The windows looked dark, not empty, watching. She excused herself early. Inside, the hallway creaked like something shifting under pressure. She clicked on her phone flashlight and climbed the narrow staircase. The upstairs air was colder. One door wouldn't open. Another led to a bedroom wrapped in faded seashell wallpaper curling at the edges. At the end of the hallway stood a bookshelf, warped, swollen, slightly off-center, too wide for the space. She stared at it. It wasn't built in, it was placed, and it was hiding something. She tugged gently. The shelf slid. Behind it, a narrow door, unpainted, no knob, just a rusted iron latch. Her stomach tightened. She opened it. Darkness swallowed the light. The smell hit first. Rotting seawater. Fishing docks at low tide. Decay. She stepped inside. The beam from her flashlight trembled across slick walls coated in white crusts that resembled barnacles. Moisture glistened across every surface. The floor shifted beneath her foot. Not wood. Soft. Saturated. A slow drip echoed from the corner. Drip. 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 There were no pipes overhead. No visible leaks. Just shadow. And something else. Movement, not clear, not defined. But something shifted in the corner of the room. Her breath caught. She backed out slowly, closed the door, shoved the bookshelf back in place, and ran downstairs. Mark looked up from the couch. You look pale. There's a hidden room upstairs. Tom perked up. Secret treasure? No, she said, voice thin. Mold. Slime. It smells like something drowned in there. Mark shrugged. Old coastal houses leak. Salt gets everywhere. Don't go poking around weird spaces, Tom added casually. But that night, no one slept well. The house creaked louder, and the dripping didn't stop. Even when the sky was clear, even when the tide was low. Cara lay awake listening. It didn't sound like rain. It sounded like waves, not outside. Inside at 2:17 a.m. the house shuddered. Not from wind, from impact, like something massive had brushed against it. She sat upright in bed. The dripping grew louder, closer. Then silence, total silence, the kind that feels like pressure in your ears. Then drip, right outside her bedroom door. Morning didn't fix anything. It made it worse. Small puddles dotted the hallway, cold, salty. Mark discovered white crust forming along the baseboards in the living room. Tom found the kitchen floor slick. Jenna tried to joke. Sea air does crazy things. But the ocean was calm, and the sky was clear. By the second night, the dripping was everywhere. Water crept beneath their bags, soaked into shoes, formed trails along the stairs. Then Jenna screamed. She came down, clutching her wrist, eyes wide with terror. Something grabbed me. Mark stood up instantly. What? In the hallway? She gasped. Cold, wet. Fingers. They searched every room. Closets, bathrooms, attic crawl space. Nothing. No broken windows. No intruders. No animals. Just the sound of distant water. Constant, unrelenting. That night, the power went out. No storm. No warning. Just darkness. And dripping. At exactly 3 a.m., Mark stepped outside for air. He didn't come back. Mark didn't come back. At first, they assumed he was being dramatic. Tom checked his phone. No signal. Jenna opened the front door and shouted his name into the darkness. The wind swallowed it. Cara stood still in the living room, listening. The ocean sounded wrong. Not louder. Closer. As if the waves had climbed the cliff without moving. They grabbed flashlights and searched the shoreline. No footprints, no disturbed sand, no sign that anyone had walked there at all. The tide was low, the beach wide and empty beneath the gray sky. It was as if Mark had stepped off the porch and dissolved. Maybe he drove off, Tom muttered, though even he didn't believe it. The car was still there. Keys on the kitchen counter. By sunrise, the wind picked up, and the house began to groan. The second night after Mark vanished, the sea attacked. There's no softer word for it. The tide was still far out, but waves began slamming into the cliffs below with impossible force. The windows rattled violently. The walls shuddered. Water started pouring from the ceiling. Not leaking. Pouring. as if something had overturned a bucket above them. Jenna cried out as a stream cascaded down the staircase. Tom grabbed towels, trying to block the door, but the wood had swollen shut. The handle wouldn't budge. The floor grew slick beneath their feet. The air turned ice cold. Cara stared at the walls. They were pulsing, not visibly, but rhythmically, like something breathing behind them. Then, the first crack split open, a seam in the plaster along the living room wall. From it, a hand pushed through, blue-gray, slick, too many joints. It didn't burst out. It unfolded. Slowly, an arm followed, then a torso, dragging itself from within the wall cavity. Its skin shimmered like deep water under moonlight. No face, only a smooth, rounded surface where features should have been. From the top of its head, strands hung downward like seaweed drifting in a current that wasn't there. Tom screamed. The thing turned toward him without eyes, and the water on the floor surged. Not spilling, rising. Tom tried to run. The water swallowed his ankles first, then his knees, then his waist. He disappeared beneath the surface of the living room floor, even though they were on the second level. Jenna Bow lated upstairs, slipping on the flooded steps. Cara reached for her, but the house shifted violently, boards warping, beams groaning like strained bone. The ceiling began dripping faster. Not droplets, streams, like rain falling upward from the sky into the house. The creature followed Jenna. It didn't climb the stairs. It flowed, stretching unnaturally, limbs bending at angles that defied bone. Cara backed toward the bookshelf at the end of the hall, the hidden door. Something told her that room mattered. She shoved the shelf aside and slipped inside, slamming it shut behind her. Silence. Immediate. Absolute. No dripping, no crashing waves, no screaming. Dry air. She crouched in the darkness, gripping a broken shard of wood. Her breathing echoed loudly in the narrow space. Seconds passed, or minutes. Then she heard it. Not from outside, from inside the room. A voice. Liquid. Gurgling. You found where she drowned. Slowly, something rose from it, a shape forming upward from shallow water. It resembled a girl. Thin arms, bone-pale limbs, but no eyes, no nose, no features except a jagged slit where a mouth should be. Seawater leaked steadily from it. You opened her door. Cara pressed against the wall, shaking. "Who are you?" she whispered. The figure tilted its head. Left. Forgotten. Drowned. Each word came layered, as if spoken by multiple voices beneath the surface. The water level in the room began to rise. The walls slickened, barnacles pulsing softly like living tissue. You found me. The thing lunged. Cara woke to sunlight, cold sand beneath her cheek. She was lying on the shoreline, alone. The ocean calm, gentle. No storm, no wreckage. She scrambled to her feet and turned toward where the house had stood. There was nothing there. No foundation, no debris, no tire tracks, no steps, just jagged rocks and untouched cliffside, as if no structure had ever existed. Authorities searched for weeks. No missing rental records. No listing history. No registered owner. Jenna, Tom, Mark, officially listed as missing persons. Unexplained disappearance. But Cara knew. The house wasn't destroyed. It had moved. And sometimes, late at night, when rain hits her apartment windows, the walls weep salt. But that wasn't the only time the house appeared. Because years later, it listed again. Different beach, different design, same hunger. And this time, it wasn't wood, it was glass. Jason and Naya, the listing looked flawless. White walls, floor-to-ceiling glass. A pristine two-bedroom beach house sitting alone on a stretch of untouched golden sand. No neighbors, no footprints, no fences. Just endless shoreline and horizon. $85 a night. Jason stared at the screen. That's suspicious. Nia smiled. or it's new and needs reviews. The photos showed sunlight pouring through glass doors onto a wide wooden deck. Clean lines, modern furniture, minimalist perfection. It didn't look old. It didn't look rotted. It didn't look like it belonged to the sea. It looked like it had conquered it. They booked it that night. The drive down was long and winding. The paved road eventually gave way to dirt, then gravel, then a narrow path cutting between dunes. The sun was dipping when the house came into view. It stood alone, glowing softly in the fading light, a box of glass resting against an untouched shoreline. The ocean was distant, calm, peaceful. Jason felt it immediately. The stillness, no birds, no insects, no distant engines, just wind and sand. That first night felt perfect. Wine on the deck, bare feet on warm boards, moonlight stretching silver across the beach. Naya leaned against him. "This place is unreal. You ever seen sand move?" he asked quietly. She laughed. "It's wind." The next morning, Jason found footprints beneath their bedroom window. Not theirs. They led from the base of the house toward the dunes. Halfway across the beach, they vanished, not faded, not blown away, stopped, like whoever made them had sunk straight down. He didn't tell Naya, not yet. That night he woke to scratching, soft, rhythmic, beneath the floor. He sat up slowly. Scratch, drag, scratch, deliberate, not random. He slid out of bed and pressed his ear to the hardwood. The sound stopped instantly. Naya stirred. "What are you doing?" "Nothing," he said. But he didn't sleep again. In the morning, there was a hole, 3 feet wide, perfectly circular, directly beneath their window. The sand inside was compacted and damp, almost sculpted. No claw marks, no displaced grains, no collapse, just precision. "Burrowing animal?" Nia suggested. "No animal does that," Jason replied. That evening, more holes appeared. Dozens, scattered across the beach like craters, all facing the house. All identical. Jason stood on the deck with a flashlight long after midnight, scanning the shoreline. The sand looked smooth, too smooth, like skin. The nightmares began on the 3rd night. Jason woke choking, his mouth filled with grit. He coughed violently, spitting sand onto the sheets. Nia flipped on the lamp. His lips were raw, his gums packed with wet grains. "I was dreaming," he whispered. "Tunnels, hands, pulling me down." They rinsed his mouth in the sink. Clumps of seaweed slid down the drain. Neither of them mentioned it again. But neither of them slept. The scratching grew louder. Each night, closer. At 3:23 a.m., Jason recorded the sound on his phone. A deep, dragging scrape beneath the bed. The video glitched halfway through playback. The audio warped, then corrupted entirely. The file wouldn't open again. On the 5th morning, Jason didn't wake up. Naya rolled over, expecting to see him staring at the ocean again. His side of the bed was empty. The sheets were soaked, grit pressed deep into the mattress like he had sunk into it. A long drag mark stretched across the floor toward the sliding glass door. It stood open. The beach was gray beneath a heavy sky. In the sand were 2 long grooves, parallel, as if something had pulled him. No footprints, no struggle. Just drag marks leading toward the shoreline. Halfway across the beach, they stopped. The sand beyond was untouched, smooth, perfect. The police arrived hours later. By then, the grooves were gone. The beach looked pristine. They searched the dunes, the water, the house. Nothing. He probably walked off. One officer said gently, "People wander." But Naya knew. Jason hadn't walked. He'd been taken. She stayed one more night. She couldn't leave without answers. At 2 a.m., she heard it. Voices. Beneath the floor. Muffled. Beneath us. She grabbed a kitchen knife and pried up a floorboard. Underneath, no foundation, no beams, no crawl space. Just sand. Wet. Black. moving. She tore up another board. More sand. It shifted. Then she saw fingers pressing upward beneath the surface. Thin, pale, wriggling, waiting. She ran, threw her bags into the car, turned the key. Click. Nothing. The headlights flickered weakly. Outside, the sand began to rise in small mounds, circling the vehicle, closing in. She bolted, barefoot. The sand resisted her steps, swallowing her ankles. Cold pressure wrapped around her legs, not grabbing. She broke free and ran toward the highway without looking back. When the sun rose, the house was gone. Not destroyed. Gone. No foundation, no deck, no glass, just untouched dunes. No rental history could be found. No record of construction permits. No satellite image ever showed a structure there. But sometimes, late at night, Nia hears scratching beneath her apartment floor. And in her dreams, Jason stands buried to his neck in golden sand. His mouth opens, and black water pours out. But the house wasn't finished, because some people don't escape. Some are called back. And 10 years later, Emma returned. Emma was 16 when her parents vanished. No storm, no forced entry, no signs of struggle. The doors were locked from the inside, coffee still warm on the kitchen table, shoes by the door, bed made. They were simply gone. Authorities ruled it an accident, a late-night walk, a sudden current, a quiet tragedy. But Emma remembered something no one else did. The ocean had been calm that night, and the house. 10 years later, she stood at the rusted gate again. The key trembled in her hand. The beach house looked smaller now. Faded paint, wood cracked by salt, windows fogged from within. Her uncle had kept it vacant all these years. Out of respect, he'd said. Emma suspected it was fear. She stepped inside. The smell hit immediately. Wet salt, decay, air too heavy for an empty building. Every surface glistened faintly, coated in a thin sheen of moisture. The floorboards creaked under her weight as though swollen from within. Nothing had changed. Her mother's withered plants still hung in the kitchen window. Her father's clock ticked on the wall, but not correctly. Each second lagged, as if time itself struggled inside this place. Emma moved down the hallway. The mirror was completely fogged. She wiped it clean. Her reflection stared back. Normal, breathing. She turned away. The mirror fogged again instantly. That night, the sound returned. Waves, but wrong. Too loud, too close. She walked to the front door and opened it. Silence. Calm ocean. Still air. She shut the door. Inside, crashing water. She froze. The walls were sweating again, thin lines of moisture trailing downward, leaving sharp white salt streaks like veins spreading through plaster. She climbed the stairs slowly. Halfway up, she saw them. Wet footprints. Bare, human. They led toward the attic hatch. The same attic no one had entered since her parents disappeared. Her throat tightened. She followed. The attic air was suffocating. Her phone flashlight cut through the darkness. Something silver glinted in a shallow puddle on the floor. Her mother's locket, still wet. Emma picked it up. That's when she heard it. Voices. Layered. Distant, as if spoken underwater. Her name, over and over. She dropped the locket and stumbled backward. The hatch slammed shut behind her. Total darkness. The voices grew louder. Then, silence. When she forced the hatch open and climbed down, the house was still. Dry. Quiet. Like it hadn't moved at all. The next day, she walked the beach for hours. Sunlight warmed the sand. Children played far down the shoreline. It looked harmless. But Emma knew better. The house was a mask, and something behind it had waited 10 years for her return. That night, the air thickened again. The windows fogged despite the heat. The salt lines on the walls hardened into jagged ridges. She locked her bedroom door. It didn't matter. The floor beneath her bed grew damp. She rolled over and saw herself standing in the mirror across the room, not moving, not breathing, just watching. Salt water dripped from its lips. Emma screamed. The mirror cracked from corner to corner. She ran downstairs. The couch was soaked. The teacup she'd left on the table lay shattered. Water streamed down the walls, and she could hear it now. Not just waves, footsteps, slow, wet, moving through the hallway behind her. She turned. Nailed to the wall beside the fogged mirror was a folded piece of paper, her handwriting. She opened it, the ink smeared but readable. The tide takes what it owns, the date written below it. Tomorrow. Emma didn't sleep. She sat on the staircase until dawn threatened the horizon. At 4:12 a.m., the front door groaned open. She ran toward it, still locked. Behind her, water crept across the floor like mist rolling in. The carpet sagged. The air turned cold. In the kitchen, they stood there, her parents, or what remained, skin pale and bloated, clothes clinging like soaked fabric dragged from the sea, eyes wide, unblinking. Water streamed steadily from their mouths. They didn't step forward, they didn't blink, they simply watched. Why? Emma whispered. Her mother's lips parted. Water poured out. You were supposed to stay. The house inhaled. Boards bending inward. Walls tightening. Emma turned and ran upstairs. The water followed. Not splashing. She reached the attic again. The locket lay open in the center of the room. Inside were 2 photographs. One of her as a child. The second was not from the past. It was her. Now, standing in the attic doorway, terrified. The same moment, the same angle, the same fear. Behind her in the photograph, 2 pale figures stood in shadow, watching. The water reached her ankles. The voices filled the attic. Stay. The last thing she saw was the mirror from downstairs, now standing upright in the attic wall, and her reflection, smiling. Then, black. When neighbors checked the property that morning, the house was sealed. Windows fogged solid, filled with water from the inside. Salt streaks ran down the exterior walls like tears. Emma was never seen again. But sometimes, at dusk, just before the light fades, 2 silhouettes stand in the attic window, and a third shape joins them, watching, waiting, dripping. The pattern beneath 3 rentals, 3 disappearances, 3 survivors, 1 house. But here's the detail investigators couldn't explain. The locations didn't match. Cara's rental stood against jagged cliffs. Jason and Naya's house rested on flat golden dunes. Emma's childhood home sat along a quiet family shoreline miles away. Different coasts, different states, different years. Yet survivors described the same things, salt forming where it shouldn't. Water rising against gravity. Footprints that stopped mid-stride, scratching beneath floors at exactly 3 a.m. And a hidden space. Always a hidden space. Authorities dismissed each case individually. Vacation accidents, mental breakdowns, unstable foundations, coastal erosion. But when the cases were cross-referenced years later by an independent researcher, something disturbing emerged. The rental listings all used variations of the same phrase. Private shoreline, untouched beach, isolated, disconnected, unrecorded. And none of the properties existed in public county records. No tax filings, no ownership deeds, no construction permits. Satellite images showed empty coastline where buildings were reported, as if the structures phased in temporarily, like tide pools that appear and vanish with the ocean's rhythm. The researcher's name was Dr. Nathan Vale, a coastal geologist turned anomaly investigator. He wasn't interested in ghosts. He studied land movement, erosion cycles, sinkholes. But the similarities in the missing person reports caught his attention. Salt water present in interior spaces with no plumbing failures. Sand replacing structural foundations. Barnacle growth inside sealed rooms. These weren't paranormal patterns. They were environmental signatures, but impossible ones. Salt deposits form over time, years, decades. Yet in these cases, they appeared overnight, as if the ocean wasn't seeping inward. It was forming from within. Dr. Vale interviewed Cara first. She still avoided the coastline, still woke to phantom dripping in her apartment walls during heavy rain. When he showed her satellite images of the supposed cliffside rental, she went pale. "That's not right," she whispered. The image showed only jagged rock, no house. "No," she insisted. "It was there, 2 stories, gray wood." He zoomed in. Nothing. "Did the ocean feel closer than it should have?" he asked. She nodded slowly. It felt like it was listening. He found Nia next. She refused formal interviews, but allowed one conversation. When he asked about the sand beneath the house, she didn't hesitate. There was no foundation, she said. It was sitting on something, and it was moving. He asked her one final question. If the house listed again, would you recognize it? Her answer was immediate. Yes. Emma's case was different. No survivor. But neighbors had reported something strange the morning she vanished. The windows. They weren't broken, but they were filled with water, as if the house had been submerged from the inside. By the time police forced entry, the interior was dry. No flooding, no damage, no water, just thick salt residue coating the walls. The house was condemned. 3 months later, it disappeared. No demolition record, no debris, just an empty lot. Dr. Vale began tracing coastal legends, not folklore of mermaids or sirens. Something older, something geological. There are regions along certain coastlines where subterranean aquifers connect directly to the sea. Massive underground chambers carved by ancient tidal pressure. Caverns beneath sand, below rock. Hidden arteries of salt water that pulse with lunar gravity. Most remain stable. Some collapse, but a rare few shift, and in extremely unusual cases rise. What if the house wasn't a structure? What if it was an extension? A growth, a vessel formed by something beneath the coastline, not built on the land, but emerging from it, like coral constructing itself from microscopic organisms. Except this coral was wood, and glass, and brick, adaptive, shifting appearance to match era and expectation, rustic cabin, modern rental, family summer home, whatever the visitor would trust. Whatever they would enter, Dr. Vale studied tide records from each disappearance. All occurred during minor lunar fluctuations. Not full moons, not storms, subtle gravitational shifts. Moments when underground seawater pressure peaks beneath coastal crust. The ocean doesn't just move horizontally. It pushes upward, into caverns, into porous rock, into weaknesses. What if, in certain rare geological points, the sea doesn't simply push water upward? What if it pushes something else? He called it a tide construct, a temporary surface formation generated by subterranean oceanic pressure. But privately, he wrote something different in his field notes. It hunts in isolation. It didn't appear near crowds. It didn't manifest in populated beaches. It selected solitude. Minimal witnesses, small groups, and it always left one behind. One survivor. Why? Cara. Nia. Emma was different. Emma was claimed, but the other 2 lived. Dr. Vale believed that wasn't mercy. It was continuity. Survivors carry memory. Memory spreads story. Story spreads fear. Fear draws curiosity. Curiosity searches listings. And isolated people looking for quiet places book them. The construct didn't need advertisements. Humans advertised isolation for it. One more pattern disturbed him most. Every survivor reported a hidden room, a space not visible in listing photos, not shown on floor plans, always behind something. A bookshelf, a hallway door, an attic hatch, a space that smelled of rot, of concentrated sea. What if that room wasn't part of the house? What if it was the source? A pressure chamber. A vertical tunnel from subterranean ocean to surface structure. A throat. And when opened, it triggered emergence. Dr. Vale made one decision that would define the rest of his life. He began searching for it. Not through rental sites, through tide charts, through unregistered coastal zones, through erosion anomalies. And eventually, he found something. A new listing, different state, fresh photos, oceanfront, private shoreline, no neighbors, $89 a night. The images showed a weathered two-story home perched on rocky cliffs, gray wood, salt-streaked windows, and in one photo, barely visible behind a hallway, a bookshelf slightly misaligned. Dr. Vale booked it. Alone. Dr. Vale enters the house. Dr. Nathan Vale arrived just before sunset. He, prepared. Not with weapons, with instruments, pressure gauges, moisture sensors, thermal imaging equipment, geological sampling kits. If this was an environmental anomaly, he would document it. If it wasn't, he would finally know. The dirt road narrowed as he approached the coastline. No tire tracks except his own. No mailboxes. No nearby cabins. Isolation, just as before. The house stood exactly as pictured. Gray wood. 2 stories. Crooked stance near jagged cliffs. Wind pressed against it, but it didn't sway. It looked rooted, not built. He stepped out of the car and paused. The ocean below roared softly, but something about the sound felt dampened, muted, as if most of it was happening somewhere else. The front steps groaned under his weight. The door resisted slightly before opening. Inside, the air was heavy with salt. His handheld humidity reader spiked instantly. 94%. Indoors, impossible without visible condensation. Yet the walls looked dry. For now, he placed a small recording device on the kitchen counter. Timestamp, 6:42 p.m., entering structure. He spoke calmly into his field recorder. No visible structural decay inconsistent with coastal exposure. No immediate signs of flooding. He walked slowly through each room. No furniture out of place. No signs of prior occupancy. Yet a thin white crust traced the edges of baseboards. Salt deposition. Recent. He touched it. Still damp. Upstairs, the temperature dropped 5 degrees. His thermal scanner flickered. Cold spots formed irregular patches along the hallway walls. Not drafts. Internal. Behind the plaster, his pulse quickened. At the end of the hallway, there it was. The bookshelf. Slightly too wide. Slightly uneven. He didn't hesitate. He slid it aside. The narrow door stood waiting. Unpainted. Iron latch rusted. Moisture beaded along its edges. He measured the air pressure before opening it. A subtle change, as if something inside had exhaled. He opened the door. The smell hit instantly. Rot. Brine. Low tide. He stepped inside. His boots sank slightly into the floor. Soft, not wood. Organic. The walls shimmered with wetness. Barnacle-like formations clustered across the surfaces. His flashlight beam caught movement. Not from a creature. From the walls themselves. Subtle pulsing, like slow breathing. He spoke into his recorder. Interior chamber present. No architectural logic. No plumbing access. Moisture source unidentified. Drip. He traced the sound upward. No pipes. No ceiling breach. The water formed midair. Then fell. His heart pounded once. Hard. He stepped deeper into the room. The air pressure dropped suddenly. His ears popped. The door behind him creaked softly. He turned. It hadn't moved, but the hallway outside looked darker, longer. The dripping grew louder, and beneath it, a second sound, scraping. Far below, he checked his barometric reader. It fluctuated wildly, as if deep underground pressure was shifting, rising. His geological training screamed at him. Subterranean aquifer surge, lunar gravitational alignment, tidal pressure pushing upward through porous crust. But this wasn't a fissure. It was controlled, directed, intentional. The puddle in the corner rippled. He crouched slowly. The water wasn't seeping from beneath the floor. It was forming, condensing from the air itself. His recorder crackled with static. Then, a whisper, not through the room, through the device, layered, wet. You returned. His rational mind tried to isolate it as interference. Audio bleed, equipment malfunction. But his voice recorder continued playing, though he had stopped speaking. You know. The puddle deepened, darkened. Something beneath the surface shifted. He stepped backward toward the door. The walls pulsed faster. The barnacle clusters flexed, opening slightly like living organisms tasting air. The temperature dropped sharply. He could see his breath now. You understand. The words vibrated through the walls. Not sound. Pressure. Dr. Vale swallowed hard. This is geological, he whispered aloud. This is a pressure anomaly. A tidal breach. The puddle split. A shape began rising, not fully formed, limbs assembling from water. Jointed, elongated. Its surface reflected light like oil on waves. No face, just smooth curvature where features should exist. And yet, he felt it looking at him. You gave us a name. The voice layered deeper. Tide construct. His blood ran cold. He hadn't published that term. He had written it only in private notes, locked, unshared. The creature tilted slightly, as if amused. You seek pattern, cold. He backed into the wall. It was soft, yielding, like saturated earth. You are pattern. The room shuddered. Above him, the house groaned, boards bending inward. His instruments short-circuited one by one. Lights flickered. Recorder died. Only the dripping remained. Drip, drip, drip. The creature extended an arm. Too many joints. Too fluid. Not bone, not flesh. Something between. You entered the throat. The water reached his knees. He tried to reach the latch. The door had sealed. No seam, no handle, just wall. You open the door, the voice whispered. We open you. The water surged. He felt pressure wrap around his legs, pulling downward. Not violently, patiently. He realized something in that final moment. The construct didn't drag people into the sea. It was the sea, or something beneath it. Something ancient that used pressure, isolation, and architecture as camouflage. A predator shaped like shelter. The last thing Dr. Vale saw was the bookshelf sliding back into place on its own. 3 weeks later, his car was abandoned near an unregistered coastal zone. No house, no tire tracks, no building permits, no debris, just jagged cliffs and empty shoreline. His research notes vanished from his encrypted files, but one draft remained saved in a cloud backup. One sentence, typed at 3:07 a.m., isolation is the invitation. But the tide wasn't finished evolving, because something changed after Dr. Vale. The house stopped waiting for bookings. It started appearing closer. Not remote cliffs, not empty dunes, but suburbs, lake houses, riverside cabins, anywhere water could reach underground. And sometimes, it builds where you already live. When the tide moves inland, after Dr. Vale vanished, the pattern didn't stop. It adapted. For years, every known encounter had been coastal. Cliffs, dunes, oceanfront homes. The explanation had been simple. Subterranean seawater pressure, tidal caverns, lunar pull. But then reports began appearing far from the ocean. At first, they seemed unrelated. A cabin beside a freshwater lake where the walls began to sweat salt. A riverside townhouse where tenants complained of constant dripping behind sealed drywall. An inland suburban home where barnacle-like growth formed in a basement storage room with no plumbing. Different states, different climates. One constant, isolation. Not geographic isolation anymore. Emotional isolation. The construct had learned something. It didn't need empty beaches. It needed vulnerability. In Chicago, a couple reported scratching beneath their apartment floor at exactly 3:12 a.m. for 3 consecutive nights. Maintenance found nothing. On the 4th night, water pooled beneath their bed. Salty, cold. They moved out. The next tenant reported the same sounds. In Nevada, a man living alone in a newly built subdivision noticed salt streaks forming along his hallway baseboards after rainstorms. But it hadn't rained. In Maine, a child described a wet room behind the closet in a lakeside home. The parents found nothing. Until a week later, the closet wall warped outward, just slightly, as if something behind it was breathing. The pattern was no longer geological. It was behavioral. After Dr. Vale attempted to define it, the construct changed strategy. No more rental listings. No more obvious shoreline bait. Now it embedded itself in structures already inhabited. Why? Because humans seek isolation, even in cities. Closed doors, dark rooms, unspoken grief, people who live alone, people who feel forgotten. The tide doesn't just rise with the moon. It rises with silence. Cara still hears dripping in her apartment. Naya still dreams of sand filling her lungs. Both moved far inland. Both avoid coastlines entirely. But isolation followed them. And sometimes, late at night, when rain hits windows, they smell salt, not faint, not imagined, thick, briny, immediate. They both reported the same new detail during follow-up interviews years later. A door. In their own homes. Not physically visible, but sensed. A space that feels slightly wrong. A section of wall that seems too cold. A corner where sound echoes differently, as if something is measuring them. Waiting. The construct never attacks immediately. It waits for recognition, for curiosity, for someone to test the wall, to move the shelf, to open the hatch. Opening the hidden room is consent, not legally, not logically, but structurally. You breach the throat. The pressure equalizes, and it rises. There is one final entry in Dr. Vale's recovered notes that most people overlook. A diagram, not of a house, of a lung. 2 chambers, connected by a narrow passage. In his margin he wrote, "Inhale, structure forms. Exhale, structure dissolves." The house was never stationary. It was breath, a cycle. The ocean below doesn't just shift with tides. It compresses, it expands. And in rare pressure alignments, it manifests architecture as a temporary extension of itself. But why the figures? Why the shapes that resemble drowned bodies? Because the ocean archives, it preserves, it reshapes what it takes, not as ghosts, as impression. Pressure molds memory into form. Those taken aren't consumed. They're incorporated, recycled into the construct's anatomy. That's why silhouettes appear in attic windows. That's why drowned faces whisper through walls. The tide doesn't kill. It assimilates. There are now online forums dedicated to something called salt houses. Photos posted anonymously. Corners of rooms forming white crust overnight. Mirrors fogging from inside. Unexplained puddles with no plumbing source. Each post dismissed. Humidity, mold, pipe leaks. But one pattern remains consistent across all verified reports. It starts small, just dampness, just a drip, just one cold patch of wall. Then the sound begins. Not loud, not violent. Measured, patient. Drip, drip, drip. Always between 3 o'clock and 3:23 a.m., the lowest human alertness window, the quietest hour of isolation. And here is the most unsettling discovery. Satellite imaging over the last 5 years shows microshifts in certain inland regions. Not sinkholes, not erosion. Pressure bulges, upward movement from subterranean water systems previously believed to be stable. The ocean is not confined to shorelines. It runs beneath continents through ancient saltwater aquifers, hidden seas below cities, sleeping, waiting for pressure alignment, waiting for weakness, waiting for someone to open the door. There is no confirmed way to stop it. Avoiding coastlines isn't enough. Avoiding lakes isn't enough. Avoiding water isn't possible. But there is one consistent preventative pattern observed. In every encounter where multiple people remained awake together, the manifestation weakened. In houses filled with noise, conversation, light, it hesitated. It feeds on isolation, on the quiet individual separated from others, on the one who investigates alone. If you hear dripping, wake someone. If you see salt forming, don't examine it alone. If a section of your wall feels wrong, do not move it. Because once you open that hidden space, you're not discovering it. It's discovering you. And sometimes, it doesn't need a beach. It doesn't need a listing. Sometimes, it builds where you already live. And when the walls begin to sweat, when the floor beneath your bed feels slightly soft, when you wake with the taste of salt in your mouth, remember this: you don't find the house, it finds you. And once you open her door, you never really leave. There's something unsettling about water. It looks calm. It reflects the sky. It feels peaceful. But beneath the surface, pressure builds in silence. That's what tonight's story was really about. Not just a house, not just the ocean, not just something waiting beneath the floorboards. It was about isolation, about what happens when silence stretches too long, about what grows in the spaces where no one is watching. Fear doesn't always rush at you. It seeps, it drips, it waits for you to be alone with it. And maybe that's why stories like this linger long after the screen goes dark. Because somewhere deep down, we understand something primal. We are not built to face the dark alone. Throughout this descent, one pattern remained constant. The house only strengthens when someone stands by themselves. The dripping grows louder in quiet rooms. The walls move when no one else is awake to notice. And maybe that's the real warning buried beneath the fiction. Shine light into dark corners. Stay connected. Speak when something feels wrong. Because silence is fertile ground for fear. If you made it this far, you didn't just watch a story. You survived it. And that matters. Fear Spiral isn't just about horror. It's about exploring the edge between the seen and unseen, the rational and the impossible. The moment when logic hesitates and something ancient breathes. If this story unsettled you, if it made you check the corners of your room, if you found yourself listening for dripping that isn't there, then it did exactly what it was meant to do. And that's the power of psychological horror. Not jump scares, not shock, but tension that follows you. Before you close this video tonight, take a second. Listen, not for something supernatural, just for the quiet hum of the world around you. Your room, your walls, your breathing. You're here. You're safe. And sometimes reminding yourself of that is powerful, because fear loses strength when you face it with awareness. If you enjoy stories that crawl under your skin slowly, if you want more narratives that feel real enough to question, make sure you subscribe to Fear Spiral, turn on notifications, and step deeper into the unknown with us. Every story here is crafted to pull you further down the spiral, layer by layer, truth by truth, until you're not sure what's real anymore. And if you ever hear dripping in the quiet hours of the night, just remember, it's probably nothing. Probably. Thank you for descending with Fear Spiral. Until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and don't open the door.